Welcome to the Art Studio Insights podcast, where we demystify the creative process and exchange ideas with career-minded artists with your host, Adriana Amay and
Jackie Sanders. We are two emerging artists sharing forward the advice and business lessons we have learned along our journey. So if you're not already, please go ahead and subscribe. This will help other creatives like you find our podcast, and you will be notified when we launch a new episode every Tuesday. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about how you build your local artist network. And this is something that we talk about all the time, especially just getting to know the land of the city that you live in. So whether you are new to our area and you're trying to research different local art organizations, or if you've taken a break from your creative practice and you're trying to get back in it and really not sure where to start, starting by building your local artist network is a great way to do that, because you get to know kind of the key players, you get to know the local art organizations and make new friends. That's actually how Adriana and I both met. I had been taking a break after a really crazy burnout after college and started to attend local art critique for contemporary artists. And so that was the fateful day that we talk about in our episode 1, Meet the Hosts, where her and I met and ended up talking for 5 hours straight.
in the cold outside.
In the cold outside, shivering. But you just making those artist friends can be so great for your creative practice and just your mindset. So it is never late to get started. And it all starts with building your local artist network.
Yeah. And, myself too, I also did start where I took a break. I did a 12 plus year detour into corporate America before finding my way back to art. So definitely never too late. Regardless of what age you are, you can always get back in the artist network game, if you will. And in a different episode, we will cover how to strengthen relationships within your network. Today, we're mostly going to focus on the initiating part of it, which, to be honest, for a lot of people, this might be either the easiest part of it, it's the follow-up that suffers later, or this is the most terrifying part of it, just to even talk to somebody else. So there's two main ways in which we can tackle this, whether it's in person or virtual. So we're just going to go ahead and dive into all the goods and go from there. So first off, let's discuss in person, right? So I'll give myself an example. I came from a whole different country, thank you very much, and language. And then even when I moved to North Carolina, I moved big cities. And I've moved. And I still take the time and make the effort to connect with others over art. I think it's totally worth it, which we'll go into that. But yeah, it's totally worth it. You're just gonna have to take my word for it until we go a little bit deeper into that. But I will say, depending on what type of network you are trying to build, is the type of venue you would prioritize, right? So
yeah,
I think of it as two main different approaches you can take to this. One of them is industry contacts. The other one is connecting with other artists. So if your main focus is connecting with other folks in your industry, right? These are people, like Jackie mentioned, like key players that could have leads on upcoming opportunities and possibly collectors too. So these are the kind of folks that you're thinking of where it's not hey buddy situation, right? This is someone you're going to try to build a professional relationship with. It doesn't have to be stiff and all serious. It can be fun too, but you're not going to approach them with the same level of familiarity you will with the second category. So with these, you're trying to figure out where would I even meet these folks? We're going to meet art consultants, curators, folks that work in galleries. We're going to meet these kind of people. Or, there might be sustainers and folks that work in foundations that like to, purchase art, maybe even corporate purchasers of art. So you're looking at places like exhibition openings and receptions. Art organizations, a lot of them will host summits, happy hours, special events. We've gone to the ones by Triangle Artworks, is one that comes to mind here in the Raleigh, North Carolina area. Yep. the galleries themselves and shops that sell original art. We're not talking about taking your artwork under your arm, and be like, look at all my stuff.
Yes,
Can
please
you
don't do that.
represent me, please? Please don't do that. Which we will have an episode about galleries in the future and do's and don'ts, and we'll go into that. That's definitely a don't. Even your local art store, you never know. You may bump into someone, an organizer of an event, but essentially it's kind of like going with an open mind. Definitely have business cards in stock in your in your purse or wallet, whatever. But you're basically looking for these opportunities, and if you have an open mind and you're kind of like keeping an eye out for them, you are more likely to be able to identify them,
right,
and identify these folks.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with that is when you think of the physical connection with these people is being where they are, right? If you go to the same places all the time, you might not necessarily run into new people. So exploring new venues, putting yourself out there, starting conversations with new people as a way of networking and just seeing where things happen. Like you were saying, don't necessarily ask immediately for gallery representation the first time you meet them. These are relationships that you're building, and not asking right away for something of how they can benefit you, but more so fostering that relationship. And it does take time, but it's a very fun experience while you're doing it as well, just to get to know the lay of the land, local organizations, and also just making new professional friends.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you never know where some of these can take you. So maybe a gallery representative, the place they work at may not be the right fit for you, but they might say, actually, I know somebody that would be great, or a place that might be great for the kind of work that you do. So again, you never know. Definitely worth putting some of that introvertedness past you to try to make some of these relationships, and keep an open mind. I'll also throw out there too, with these in-person ones, especially when you're trying to foster a professional relationship, is going to be, believe it or not, your appearance. I'm just going to throw that out there real quick. We'll have a conversation about that at some point in the future, but just be presentable. If you're looking at these folks as people that you want as part of your extended team,
right?
You want to show up for them. You want to make that effort. You want to look presentable. We're not saying dress up, but you do want to look, neat and, professional, as if you're going to work with them and you want them to work with you. So I will throw that out there.
Exactly. And I think that's the biggest thing too, where yes, as artists and as creatives, sometimes the idea of business strategy and the corporate mindset can feel super icky. But realistically, when it comes to networking, a lot of the same principles apply. Having friends and people connections within your industry is super helpful. Making a good first impression, coming prepared, having a strong brand as an artist, all these business principles, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, and the arts are no different when it comes to these very basic things like networking.
Exactly. And especially when you're networking with industry professionals, as opposed to, not that it is mutually exclusive, but it's a little bit more relaxed when you're trying to connect with other artists.
Yeah.
You still want to be professional about it, but you can tend to be a little bit more relaxed, and honestly, what you're wearing doesn't matter as much. You can show up in sweats and it's probably fine. Probably. Again, it depends,
Depends.
It depends who you're trying to connect with and kind of how they present themselves. But connecting with other artists gives you that opportunity to kind of build your own support system, kind of have like an extended family, if you will.
Yeah.
As long as, and this is like a huge thing that Jackie and I are always repeating, as long as you go in with a spirit of community over competition. If you think this is a world of dog eats dog, don't even bother then connecting with other artists, because you're only going to view them as competition. It's going to be hostile, and that's not worth it. If you go in, much like even with the industry professionals, with a spirit of like, okay, what is it? I scratch your back, you scratch mine, kind of situation of like, how can we help each other rise together? Mm-hmm. Then, I mean, sky's the limit. So,
and you're going to get so much further with that mindset too.
Yeah. I mean, Jackie, this is how you and I got together. Now we do a podcast, and we have a membership, and there's all kinds of stuff we do together, because we went into that, kind of like, hey, we have strengths that like and weaknesses, of course, but we have like elements where we complement each other, and
Right.
there's countless other artists that we meet, and it's the same way. It's kind of like, how can you leverage each other's expertise and knowledge to grow together?
Right, exactly.
It's
And like two brains are better than one, five
mhm,
brains are better than one. And especially when it comes to different opportunities as artists as well, especially let's say if that the artist that you meet, maybe they've been in the area longer, maybe they already have done some research. So you can kind of use their experience and knowledge to then get to know the area better. But then also maybe you hear about an exhibition that their artwork would be great for, you might not be a good fit. Sharing for that opportunities. I feel like sometimes if you don't have that community over competition mindset, you can say, oh, I heard about this exhibition. I'm not going to tell anybody about it because that just means there'll be more competition for
not
me.
really.
Which is like, that's a more stressful mindset, I feel like, to have when like the first thing Adriana and I do when we hear about like an open call or an exhibition
Did you apply
opening
to
is
this
like,
yet?
right. I'll text her and be like, did you reply to this yet? And now with our Level Up Artist membership, it's like, okay, how can we, what artist in our membership might be a good fit for this? And making sure
Mhm.
we forward it to them. Again, just community over competition, where it's like, even if we're both applying for the same show, if you get in over me and I told you about originally, that just means it wasn't my right fit for me.
Mhm.
There's so many different variables that come into exhibitions being selected, both solo or group, which we'll go into. But really, I'm just more excited for you. And I would feel so much better that you get it over me than like I probably wouldn't have gotten it anyway. And I also hid this opportunity from you.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, yeah, that's just one of the many examples we could go into of why, fostering this kind of relationship with other artists could be so useful. I mean, maybe I get a commission request of something that I just simply don't do.
Yeah.
Because we already work together and have this relationship. I'll just pass it on to you. I'm like, I'm not painting that. It's not my jam, but I
Right.
actually know somebody that does. Here you go.
That's huge. Yeah. I've done that
Yeah.
several times too.
Yeah, you just never ever know. Definitely worth it. And I always talk to my introverted folks because I know there's a lot of you out there, and I've come from that place too, believe it or not. Where yeah, like taking that effort, there's less pressure when it's another artist. Look, you might go into nerdy mode and whatnot. So do we. So maybe you can
Right.
even use this as your warm up to networking with industry professionals is to talk to other artists. But without further ado, you might be wondering, Adriana, Jackie, where do you find these people? I mean, some of them might be obvious, but we're just going to dive into them anyway. So, visiting art fairs, market, and events, not as a participant, just as a visitor,
Yeah. That's
gets you a
huge.
chance to interact with other artists, hear how they talk, how they sell their wares, so to speak,
Mhm.
and they are already open to talking to people, so might as well, right? And we don't mean like stay there 20 minutes situation, especially if you're not going to buy, but you can kind of start that relationship, exchange cards, see what you're all about. Maybe there's some mutual points of connection there you can start with.
Yeah.
Opening open studios at buildings like Art Space and Anchor Light. These are buildings that are full of artist studios, and
Yeah.
during open studio events, artists again are willing to talk and share and everything else. Regional open studio events. So this especially applies if you're in a more rural area or maybe a more remote area. There's these type of events in which you get to drive to the artist studios on a map on a designated time period, and then you usually get to studio hop, so to speak, which is great. A lot of times these are home studios, and you kind of get to see like where these folks are and kind of like
Yeah.
what their environment around them is and how it possibly influences them. So that's really cool. And then also very easy art meetup groups. So whether it's critique groups like the ones Jackie and I met with, there's plein air painting, there's urban sketchers, there's all kinds of groups that you can find online. And again, I'm focusing on in person, in which they'll just go out. It's zero pressure. A lot of times they're either free or low cost, and it's a great place to collaborate with other creative minds. And you never know, again, besides like helping each other out, somebody may have an idea, what about this, or material, like you you just never know. But definitely, whether virtual or in person, whether professional or just other artists, definitely worth a shot. Try a little bit at a time, whatever you feel comfortable with, but definitely worth a shot.
Yeah, definitely. And all of the places that we mentioned within this episode, especially those last couple, because we are both Raleigh-based artists in Raleigh, North Carolina, they will be specific to our area. But if you are listening, whether in another state or internationally, there are definitely similar physical organizations where you are. So it might just take a quick search, and that's where the virtual research comes in. So in addition to in-person events or meeting people at fairs and markets that can become artist friends, as all of us learned over the past year or two, the emphasis on building virtual connections this day and age is great because it doesn't have to be such a roadblock. I think this is especially great for if you're an introvert, maybe putting yourself out there in physical situations can bring a lot of anxiety to you. So starting with virtual networking, maybe having a relationship or two, a friend or two, and then you can bring that relationship to an in-person event. Mm-hmm. So when networking online, the first place you want to start is really by doing a web search. So search in your area and make a master list of like galleries, museums, nonprofits in your area. I'm sure someone else has already done that as well, and you can probably find it when you Google it. But really look at all these key players in your area and make a master list for yourself of which places do you want to visit. You can start checking those off, bringing your virtual research into your physical research. But additionally, for doing research online, start following them on social media, start signing up for these organization newsletters. I feel like this is a great way and super insightful to see, especially when it comes to the institution standpoint. Okay, what is their target audience? What types of programs do they have? Do they have summer camps? Do they have gallery talks? Do they have open calls? How frequently are the open calls? Is it for the next month's exhibition, or do they schedule a year and a half out? Those are all different things to consider, that it's good to have that foundation of knowledge before you go into a situation, because you can also manage your expectations, and also like just observe what these organizations are doing as you're getting back into the game of the creative process, or as you're getting to know a new city. And so, especially with organizations, I think staying in the loop with those local events and exhibition opportunities is super, super important. Because like Adriana was talking about, then you can attend these events. You can see, okay, are there a lot of fellow artists that attend? Are there collectors and gallery owners? Or what are the price points for certain galleries? For example, let's say if you make paintings and let's say the highest price piece is $2,000. Again, all hypotheticals. If your highest price piece is $2,000 and you go in the gallery and the lowest price piece they have is $10K, that might not necessarily be a good fit as you're starting off. And understanding those key players and where they fit almost in like the local hierarchy of the creative journey is super helpful. And it does take time to learn and understand. And that's where networking with other artists is helpful, especially if they've been in the area for a long time. But being able to sign up for those newsletters of nonprofits, museums, and galleries is a great way to see who those key players are and just become informed with what's going on in your area.
Yeah, and they'll also let you know to, especially as you're planning out career-wise, which is of course what we focus here, in our podcast, is also knowing some of these institutions are not going to be the right fit for you, and don't feel like you have to follow them and all the things. But as you do your research, that's a really, really good way to funnel it down a little bit, where you might go, actually, this type of institution or this other kind of organization or this type of collector, museum, gallery, etc., they're the better fit for me. And then I can go from there, and maybe even the way I present myself or the way that I communicate with them, I can tweak it and pivot as necessary. But yeah, I do definitely agree with Jackie to cast a wide net first, see what's around in your area. Even again, if you're in a small town or city, it doesn't matter. Maybe you have something that's driving distance away, even if it's a little bit farther out, but see what's in your area and then start narrowing it down from there so you can kind of work towards your North Star, towards your goals, and places that you want to be at eventually, if you want to be represented. Even if you don't, it'll still give you an idea in terms of like your career, and you can get ideas on where to go next. But definitely
Right,
worth a
exactly.
shot.
I think that's a great point, Adriana. And especially when like setting and managing your own expectations on what your goals can be in your local area. So, like you're saying, casting the wide net, even starting for, are there local restaurants or coffee shops that showcase local artwork? That can be a great stepping stone when trying to get into galleries or other arts organizations. And so being able to kind of like understand who those key players and institutions are, and then kind of set, okay, within 6 months, I want to get into maybe this gallery or this coffee shop or this performing arts center. And you can kind of then set your goals accordingly now that you know who all these key players are.
Yeah, and they're online. I mean, it's great. There's
Right.
no talking and Rolodexing and God knows what else was back in the day. But yeah, knowing that you can find them online, it's
Yeah.
fantastic. You can see them online first, see what they're all about before you ever step in the door. So there's that.
Right. Exactly. And I think that's a great way or a great thing about, I mean, technology and the virtual world that we live in is because it does make this information so much more approachable, both from an institution standpoint, but also as fellow artists. Being able to have social media and our own websites relatively easily so that we can connect with each other. So, yes, doing research on organizations, but also making new friends is totally obtainable on social media these days, which again, I think it's a great thing, especially if you're an introvert. Many artists are. And it's a great way that you can stay in the comfort of your home, stay on your computer or phone, and still be able to message and connect with other artists in your area. So being able to just use hashtags of your local area artists. So like North Carolina artists, NC artists, Raleigh artists, or maybe a specific style that you do that you can connect with. Or even looking at the geotag that people use. I live right by the North Carolina Museum of Art. So there's always people tagging that place, or if people come to Art Space, they tag Art Space. That's like a list of people that have been there and are potential friends that clearly they've been there, they support the arts, they enjoyed their experience, they tagged it. And this is, I think, my biggest tip for other people, which might sound super strange, but slide into people's DMs. If anyone connects with me on social media, I am no stranger of doing this because
Queen.
I just want to make friends. And again, like I'm not asking for anything. I'll find artists on social media and be like, hey, your work is amazing. I love what you do. This is what I love about it. And then might ask them some questions, just like you would in person, like acting as if like your social media is your storefront, essentially. Imagine you're like walking through the mall, you see someone's storefront and you pop your head in. Yeah, I'm going to say hi to them. I'm going to compliment them. I'm going to ask questions. And I treat social media the exact same way I would in person, which I feel like can be nerve-wracking to some people. But I will just shamelessly slide into DMs and be like, you're doing amazing. I love this. You seem great. Let's stay connected. And honestly, like, who wouldn't want to receive a message like that? I think that's the biggest thing when like all those self-limiting beliefs and doubts that come into our brain, especially if you're more introverted. Be like, well, I don't want them to think I'm weird. What if, like, who am I to talk to them? They're probably like so like higher up. I'm like a nobody, blah, blah, blah. Or I'm like, social media is a level playing field. I don't care if you have 50,000 followers or 400 followers.
Or
I'm gonna
two.
slide into those DMs and compliment you and just hype you up. And I just want to be friends with everyone. So I definitely encourage other artists to do that too, because just making that genuine human connection on social media is so empowering. And it also makes social media a more positive place to be on, because then if it's your virtual friends on your feed just hyping you up or commenting on your pictures. That always feels good. But it's also a perfect opportunity, especially if you're using local locations or local hashtags, to turn those virtual friends to in-person friends. Mm-hmm. There have been so many artists that I've invited to my studio, or, hey, let's go grab coffee. And being able to turn those virtual relationships into in-person relationships, so then we can explore the physical landscape together, which is so much fun.
Yeah, and there's an extended version of that too, which I'm really, really excited post-COVID to try out. There are artists that I've met through social media that are in the UK, in different parts of Europe, even Australia. And you're going to love this. I've never met them in person, heck, even in the States, that have gone, like, we've worked on this relationship for some time, right? Back and forth. I love your stuff. So it's not just like the superficial. We've gone a little bit deeper than that. And they're like, oh yeah, if you come to my country, you can stay with me. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what? That would be amazing. Like, let's go to the museum. Like, they're like willing to show you the sights and sounds and flavors of their towns that they grew up with, or where their studios are, and they'll take you to museums and everything else. And it's like, it's not this icky online stranger thing of like the early 2000s situation. It's more like, no, you see their art, you see what they're into, you look at their stories, you know, you see they have like an awesome dog and live by a creek and have a cute kid, I don't know, whatever it is. And like, you get to know them a little bit better. And then when that time, you know, in your friendship blooms to this level where they go, come and stay with me in like Ireland, for example, I'm like, yes, please. Yes, please. Like, that would be, or Australia. Yes, please. That would be amazing. But yeah, so besides local, obviously, depending on your comfort level, maybe start local, get comfortable with that. Maybe just meet out for coffee or visit each other's studio, you know, little baby steps. And then actually, to tie it back into an earlier one I mentioned, this is also great because these are the kind of friends that later on, and you and I, Jackie, have done this, there's an exhibition, there's a gala, there's something going on, and it's like, you're like, I don't want to go by myself, I need support, I need like backup, I need a wing person. And that's when you call one of your fellow artists and you say, there's this like museum exhibition going on and there's nothing like doing this stuff with another artist. It's awesome. And
exactly. And I think that's the thing too, like, art friendships are so unique in that, like, there are certain qualities of being an artist that like you can't necessarily explain to non-artists. Right. So whether it's like normally a significant other that you're dragging to these events and they're like not really interested, but they put up with it because they care about you, or even like non-artist friends, like it's just such a fun, unique experience to go to these events with fellow creatives, especially people that may have similar goals to you. And especially if that relationship might develop into more of a either partnership like Adriana and I's relationship has, or even just like an artist accountability buddy of, hey, like, what are your goals this month? What are your goals for the rest of the year? How can I support you in them? Or how can I keep you accountable? And having someone to like just brainstorm ideas or possibilities with is such a game changer, because it also helps like fire you up, because I think as most people will admit, like, we are nicer to other people than we might be with ourselves when it comes to like critiquing our own work or like thinking of what it's possible. But if you have a core group of people that can like hype up your work, it can really transform your career as an artist and your confidence moving forward.
Especially when you go through the tough bits, you know, having that helping hand is everything. But as we wrap this up, you know, a few parting words, so to speak. In person, you know, make a list of places, start checking them off. Again, you know, like Jackie mentioned, you can start online, cast the white net, narrow it down. Everybody's time is limited, of course. So go ahead and cherry pick from there, make your way down the list. Stay positive. Definitely stay positive. Always bond over your shared love of art. Remember, this is not a competition. This is a community. Even if your artwork is very similar, it's going to resonate with people differently. So it is not a competition. Be open to new people and experiences. I will say, coming from corporate America and, you know, shifting to the art world, You're gonna see all kinds of people, especially when it comes to art. Just be open.
Yeah.
Let it come. Just go with it. Just roll with it. You're gonna meet some of the most amazing and quirky people that I've
The
ever
most
met.
interesting people.
Absolutely no regrets. It's amazing. And even if you're introverted, like we've mentioned a few times on this one, because we know, we feel for you, we see you, our introverted friends, just take that chance. You never know, those opportunities may come out. Be open to sharing with others. They'll be more open to sharing with you. You never know what opportunities will come your way, as well as for others that now you've helped open the door for. So
Exactly. And honestly, when it comes down to it, like building your artist network is probably one of the most beneficial things you can do as a career-minded artist, both professionally and socially, because you never really know where you're going to meet your new artist bestie or someone that has a connection that can help you get your first solo exhibition. So keep an open mind, take baby steps, put yourself out there, and it will totally be worth it and really help get you acquainted with your local art community and propel your career forward as a career-minded artist.
Absolutely. Anyways, yeah, definitely give this a try. So that is a wrap for today's conversation, and we hope you enjoyed this episode.
As always, both of our blogs will be linked in today's show notes, where you can find episode notes, resources mentioned in today's episode, and links to every other podcast episode.
If you want to stay connected with us in between episodes, also if you have other tips, tricks, locations, places to connect with other artists and create your own network, let us know. You can follow us on social media. I'm at Amay Art across all platforms.
And I'm at J Standard Studio across all platforms. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you next week.